He said I was his life, smiled while watching me break. And that's when I realized I was just a game to him. But then, I made sure his game ended in pain. I believed him. When he said those words, "You're my life, my everything," he looked me in the eyes like I was the only person left in the world who mattered. And I was desperate to matter to someone. Anyone. After everything I'd been through, I needed someone to see me. Not just glance at me, really see me. He did. Or at least, he pretended to. I was 24, newly out of a toxic home, with barely any savings and a heart full of cracks. My father was emotionally absent, my mother emotionally unstable. I'd spent most of my life walking on eggshells, until I finally decided I'd rather struggle in the real world than suffocate in that house another second. I was working 2 jobs, one at a bookstore, another waiting tables at night. My only real luxury was coffee from the cafe 2 blocks from the restaurant. That's where I met him. Alec. Tall, charming, quiet confidence. The kind of man who didn't need to say much to be noticed. The first time he walked in, he sat alone, ordered black coffee, and watched me, not in a creepy way, but with a kind of curiosity. Like he was trying to figure out who I was just by watching how I moved. The second time he came in, he left a note on a napkin. "You have a warrior's eyes. What's your story?" My breath caught in my throat. No one had ever seen me like that, not as fragile, but as someone strong. We started talking. It began slowly. A few minutes after my shift here and there. Then texts. Then dinners. Then long walks where he let me talk about my past, the dark parts I had never told anyone. He never judged me. He just listened and hold my hand like I was something precious. "You've survived more than most ever will," he said one night. "You don't have to fight anymore. I'll protect you now." Those words, they became my oxygen. He moved in after 6 months. Said he wanted to take the pressure off me. That I shouldn't have to work so hard. "Let me take care of things," he insisted. And I let him. For the first time in my life, I felt safe. Wanted. Loved. But safety can be a beautifully painted cage. And love. Well, sometimes love is just a mask cruelty wears. Because Alec wasn't who he said he was. Not really. The cracks started small. A missed call he wouldn't explain. A weird charge on our shared card. A phone he suddenly started locking. I ignored it all. I wanted to ignore it. I kept telling myself, he saved me. He loves me. I'm just being paranoid. But the truth? He didn't save me. He just waited until I was too broken to fight back. And by the time I realized what he really was, it was already too late. Alec didn't change overnight. That's the thing about emotional predators. They don't rip the mask off in one go. They peel it back slowly, carefully, until you're too numb to scream, too confused to run. It started with small control. He'd suggest I wear certain things. "You look prettier in soft colors," he'd say, taking away my favorite blacks and reds. Then he'd comment on my friends. "Why do you even talk to Zoe? She's always negative. Not good for your healing." Bit by bit, my world shrank. He didn't yell. Not then. He suggested. He guided. Always with a soft voice, a calm face, and eyes that held just enough warmth to make me doubt my instincts. Until I had no friends left. No job, because he said I didn't need to work anymore. No phone, just his, because social media's toxic for your mental health. At first, I defended him. To myself. To Zoe, before she gave up calling. He just cares about me. He's helping me grow. He's healing me. But then came the gaslighting. The manipulation. I'd cry and he'd stare blankly at me. "You're too sensitive." I'd ask why he was texting a girl named Amber at 1 a.m. and he'd laugh. "Are you serious? She's my coworker. Grow up." He never raised his voice. That was the scariest part. He didn't need to shout to break me. He just watched. watched like he was studying the fall of a beautiful statue he'd spent months sculpting, admiring every new crack, every shattered piece. The man who once said I was his world. He smiled while watching that world collapse. And the moment I truly realized what he'd done to me, what he was still doing, was the night I found the notebook. I wasn't looking for it. He was out late. Work thing, he said. I was folding laundry and knocked over one of his drawers. It slid open, too easily. And inside was a journal. Leather bound. Nothing unusual. Until I opened it. Page after page of notes. About me. Not love notes. No observations. Like I was a project. A game. Day 42. She broke down again. Guilt tactic? Possibly trauma trigger. Didn't respond. She apologized. Test. Success. Day 87. Removed social media. Complained for 3 days. Resistance decreasing. Day 110. Emotional isolation near complete. She trusts no one but me. She's ready. I stared at the pages, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it was trying to rip itself from my chest. I was reading proof that everything, had been a performance. Every kiss. Every night spent holding me while I cried. Every promise to protect me. It wasn't love. It was strategy. He hadn't fallen in love with me. He'd hunted me. And the worst part? He'd won. Because I had no one left. No job. No friends. No phone. No money. My own reflection looked like a stranger to me. And still, some part of me hoped there was a mistake. That maybe it was research for a character or therapy notes gone too far. I was desperate for it not to be real. But when Alec came home that night and I asked him, showed him the notebook, he didn't deny it. He didn't even flinch. He just tilted his head and said, "Took you long enough. Took you long enough." 4 words. That's all it took to flip my world upside down. He didn't panic. He didn't try to take the notebook back. He just looked at me like I was a dumb child who had finally solved a puzzle meant for toddlers. A smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth, cold and smug. I couldn't speak. My hands trembled. My throat was dry. I stared at him like he was some kind of monster. But that was the thing, wasn't it? He was a monster. Just one who wore the perfect disguise. A disguise I'd fallen in love with. Trusted. Lived with. Slept beside. "You used me," I whispered, voice cracking. His smirk widened. "No. I studied you. I learned you. You were broken when I found you. I gave you purpose. Structure. You should be thanking me." Thanking him? My nails dug into my palms. I wanted to scream, to cry, to collapse. But something inside me, something long buried, something he hadn't quite destroyed, started to stir. It wasn't pain. It was rage. "You made me cut everyone off. You made me depend on you." "I guided you," he replied, completely unbothered. "That's what you needed. Someone to mold you, fix you. And you were coming along so well. Until now." His eyes narrowed. The softness drained from his face like melting wax. "Put the notebook back," he said, his voice suddenly lower. Colder. There it was. The real Alec. The man behind the mask. For a flicker of a second, his expression was completely flat. Not angry, not sad, just empty. He was done pretending. So I pretended instead. I placed the notebook back gently, like a scolded child caught snooping in her parents' drawer. I nodded. Said I was sorry. Said I didn't mean to go through his things. Said I overreacted. And he bought it. Because of course he did. I had trained him too, taught him how much I could take. How far he could push before I broke. He didn't think I had it in me to fight back. But something changed in me that night. I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling while Alex slept peacefully beside me, one arm slung over my waist like I was a prize he claimed. I counted every second. Every breath, every heartbeat that reminded me I was still alive, that he hadn't won. Not yet. By morning, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to play his game. But this time, I was writing the rules. He thought I was broken beyond repair. He thought I'd never fight back. And that's exactly what I needed him to keep thinking. Over the next few weeks, I became everything he wanted again. I cooked his favorite meals, laughed at his tired jokes, let him hold me like nothing had changed. I played my role with perfect precision, just like he had for so many months. Only now, I was watching him, studying him. He didn't know I was collecting pieces, little things he thought didn't matter. A login here, a receipt there. Names he muttered on late-night calls, code words he used when transferring money. He was always careful around me, but arrogance makes even the smartest men sloppy. And Alec? He was arrogant to the bone. He didn't just manipulate women. I learned he was running more than just mind games. Investment scams, fake consulting deals, all under aliases tied to shell accounts. And every time he made me feel like nothing, I tucked another secret away. Every bruise he left on my heart became a stepping stone. But revenge isn't just about payback. It's about patience. I didn't want to hurt him fast. I wanted him to feel what I felt, piece by piece, quietly, deeply, until he didn't even realize he was bleeding until it was far too late. So I started with his ego. I found Amber, the girl he was texting at 1 a.m. Turned out, she wasn't just a coworker. She was his next project. A younger version of me, wide-eyed, vulnerable, and ready to believe a man like Alec was her savior. She was already pulling away from her friends, already doubting her instincts. So I met her. Secretly, carefully, slipped her screenshots of the notebook pages, showed her who he really was. At first, she didn't believe me. But when I told her about the phrases he used, "You're safe now. Let me carry your pain. You don't need anyone else," her face crumpled. She cried for hours. And then she helped me. While I built my case from the inside, she played sweet from the outside. Sent him flirtatious texts. Encouraged his secrets. Until we had everything. His accounts, his passwords, his voice recordings, his threats, his lies. And still, I stayed. I slept beside him. Smiled at him. Pretended like I was his again. Until I had enough. Enough to destroy his life. And then, I made my move. It started with whispers. A few flagged transactions. A call from his silent partner that never got answered. A blocked account. At first, Alec just got irritated. He cursed at the phone, paced the apartment, blamed tech issues. I played the clueless girlfriend, offering him coffee, a kiss, a shoulder to lean on. "You've got this, baby. You always fix everything." He nodded, smiled, kissed my forehead, because he still thought I was his. But in the background, everything was unraveling. Amber had reached out to 3 other women he'd previously manipulated. All had different stories, but one thing in common: Alec had used their trauma as leverage. Promised them safety, then turned it into silent imprisonment. And now we had a list. A network. Evidence. One of the girls was a tech genius. Quiet, soft-spoken, until she started tracing Alec's money flow. Another had screenshots from when he tried to convince her she was insane. One had recordings. All of them were scared at first. But when they realized they weren't alone, that someone finally believed them, they lit up like fire. And I was the match. It was poetic, in a way. He had turned us into ghosts. Now we were coming back to haunt him. The final move came in the form of an anonymous tip. Multiple, actually. One to his investors, with documentation of embezzlement. One to the police, detailing digital fraud and psychological abuse. One to the media, complete with screenshots, statements from victims, and an anonymous interview from someone still inside. And then I disappeared. Left the apartment while he was out. Cleared my tracks. Turned off my phone. Took only what I came into that relationship with, and the mountain of evidence he handed me, piece by piece, while thinking he was untouchable. The next day, his face was on every financial blog in the city. 2 days later, on the local news. Within a week, his bank accounts were frozen, his clients gone, his home raided. And all he could do was watch it happen. Just like I had watched him when he destroyed me and smiled. I watched from a distance. I saw the headline spiral. Investor accused of fraud, coercive control. Anonymous victims speak out. Private notes expose manipulation tactics. The media didn't have my name. None of us gave it. We were shadows. Voices behind blurred screens and distorted audio. But Alec knew. Oh, he knew. He knew I'd done it. And for the first time in his meticulously orchestrated life, he couldn't prove a thing. He tried to spin it, of course. Claimed jealousy, lies, emotional instability. But the more he spoke, the more unhinged he looked. The confident mask cracked under pressure. And behind it, a man who couldn't function without control. Without me. He called. Over and over. Left voicemails. At first, angry. Then desperate. You think you're clever? You think you can destroy me and walk away? I loved you. You're sick. You need help. Come home. We can fix this. Please. Please just talk to me. I'm lost without you. Every word was music. Every scream a note in the symphony of his collapse. He had no idea where I was. And I kept it that way. I stayed off-grid, crashing with one of the girls he'd ghosted 2 years back. She lived in a tiny studio with peeling wallpaper and more plants than furniture. But it was peaceful. Safe. Real. For the first time in years, I breathed without fear. And Alec? He spiraled. He was arrested within 10 days of the first tip, not for everything, but for enough. Wire fraud. False identity filings. Stalking allegations. Amber press charges, supported by 4 others. The notebook, sanitized and redacted, became Exhibit A. He looked so small in that courtroom photo. Not the towering, cold manipulator I once knew. Just a man. A scared, bitter, defeated man. But I wasn't satisfied. Not yet. Because his punishment wasn't just in bars and courtrooms. It was in the silence. The absence of my tears. The echo of his own voice in the void I left behind. He built his empire on the backs of broken women, whispering lies into their wounds. And now his empire was dust. And his voice? It was finally just a whisper, drowned out by the voices he tried to erase. They say justice is blind. But revenge? Revenge sees everything. It watches. It waits. And when it strikes in silence with the same cold precision Alec once used on me. Only this time, he was the one unraveling. His trial dragged on for months. More women came forward. More secrets leaked. His so-called friends distanced themselves. His family stayed quiet, and the empire he built on charm and deception became a cautionary tale whispered across courtrooms and chat rooms alike. But the thing about men like Alec? They don't accept defeat. They wait for a crack, a weak spot. And I gave him one. A letter. Handwritten. Left in an envelope with no return address. Just 5 words scribbled on the front. You never broke me, Alec. Inside, I wrote the truth. Not the story the media told. My story. How he'd found me when I was most vulnerable. How he stripped me of my light and called it love. How I watched the man who claimed to save me become the reason I forgot who I was. And how I built myself back, not despite him, but because of him. I ended it with a photograph. A picture of me. Not the girl he met, fragile and hollow-eyed. No, this was me now. Standing tall. dressed in bold red. A quiet smile on my lips. Eyes no longer searching for permission, but filled with power. He received it just before his sentencing. I never saw his reaction. Never needed to. Because I know him. And I know that photo broke him in ways a prison sentence never could. He'll wake up every day knowing I lived. I healed. And he couldn't stop it. He'll know that every breath I take is one he doesn't own. That the girl he tried to erase not only survived, she won. And not just for herself, but for every woman he thought he buried. For every voice he tried to silence. I stood at the cliff where it all began. The place I used to come when I needed silence. Back when the world was too loud and my thoughts even louder. Before Alec. Before the pain. Before the lies. This time it was quiet in a different way. Not hollow. Not numb. But peaceful. I looked out at the water and let the wind hit my face. It didn't sting like it used to. I wasn't shivering or hiding under oversized coats or trying to disappear into my own skin. No. This time, I stood still. Present. Alive. Alec was gone, not dead, but stripped of the one thing that mattered to him more than freedom. Control. He lost the power to narrate my story. And once I took that back, everything changed. People think revenge is rage and fire and destruction. But mine was colder, sharper. Like the edge of a knife he never saw coming, because he taught me how to hold it. Amber texts me sometimes. So do the others. We don't talk about him much anymore. We talk about healing, about new jobs, about plants and poetry and birthdays. We became sisters in the fire he lit. Now we warm each other in its ashes. I still carry scars. I won't pretend I don't. But they're no longer marks of weakness. They're proof of survival, of evolution, of transformation. He thought he was the author of my story. He thought he'd written my ending in ink I couldn't wash away. But what he didn't know, what he never understood, is that I never needed to rewrite his chapters. I just needed to write my own. Because now, when people ask about my past, I don't flinch. I don't hide. I look them in the eye and smile. And I say, he saw me shattered and called me his. Promised to piece me back together. But just when I started to heal, he broke me all over again. But then, I turned his heaven into the hell he deserved.